What do you got out here?
Well, we got a place for Elvis to park, in case he ever shows up. My dad thought that was funny, so we put that up.
Some may think that the straight-talking roots rocker John Mellencamp, at 55 years old, might be mellowing. But think again. When we visited Mellencamp at his studio in Belmont, Indiana, he was fresh from a landmark concert at Walter Reed Hospital and was savoring his latest album, Freedom's Road, which tackles subjects such as racism and intolerance. We had barely settled in when we got the first glimpse of classic John Mellencamp. Introspective, unruffled, and far from mellow.
Well, if I ask you, and I'm about to ask you, to make the statement, this I believe. What do you believe? What's your bedrock?
This, I believe that we could all do better and that people give up too early. Those are two things that I'm pretty certain of. Most people quit way too early in the race, and most people are not interested, for whatever reason, in doing the best job they possibly can. They want to quit early.
And where did you learn this?
I guess from my grandfather. His whole point in life to me was always, if you're going to do it and you tell somebody you're going to do it, you have to do it. I think that's probably what I've taken with me all through life, was being tenacious, and I have always seen myself as Sisyphus rolling the rock up the hill. And that's the joy of life. People are here to work, and that's what we're sent here to do, is to work.
It's paid with the tolerance, ignorance and fear. Someday, but I don't know where.
If you had to describe your music, how would you describe it?
My music? Well, I would say that it's. I have always written songs. Let me start this over. A lot of people write to their base. I've always written to the other side, because I live where the other side lives. You know, I am probably the most liberal guy that you're going to talk to, but I live in a very conservative place. So my goal as a songwriter is to talk to conservatives and try to say in a song, this is another way of thinking. This is perhaps could work better for us. This is, you know, whatever the message I'm trying to convey. So I'm always writing to the other side. I'm not writing to my base.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Now, you said liberal. Give me your definition of liberal. What do you mean by liberal?
I am so liberal that if I said what I really believed, they would probably run me out of the country.
Well, let's try it.
No. Let's don't say we did.
Well, I'm not going to dwell on this, but when you say you're liberal, you consider yourself slightly left of center, medium left of center, pretty far left of center?
I am for the common man, to the point where I'm not even sure the common man understands how poorly he's been treated and trampled on. And so I feel like I've got to be the guy in the red state who says, even though they don't want me to say it. You know, I wrote a song called To Washington before the war started, and people went nuts here that I wrote such an awful song about George Bush. And it wasn't an awful song, it was an old song. You know, Woody Guthrie wrote it, and then I kind of updated it. People were driving by my house and yelling stuff, and I was confused. I thought, I'm trying to say what needs to be said for this area. Because in the song it says, he wants to fight with many, he says it's not for oil. You know, and a lot of lines that turned out to be exactly right. You know, so. I was driving to the airport with my kids, and they played it on the radio, and then they took calls. And this guy calls up and he goes, I don't know who I hate the most, Saddam Hussein or John Mellencamp. And my kids are little boys, and they go, Dad, they talking about you? About just because of that song? And I said, yeah, well, you stick your neck out, you get it cut off sometimes, I guess, you know. So So, you know, I always try to talk to people who maybe sometimes don't want to be talked to.
Anybody who knows your music at all knows your music is a lot about the human spirit.
Well, one thing that I'm learning about the human spirit, and as much as I'd like to be positive about it, there's something wrong with it. There's something amiss with it. I'm not sure what it is, but so many times I see people who have the opportunity to do good things, and inevitably they do something bad with it. And I see it on personal levels. I see me do it. I see friends of mine do it. I see public officials do it. And inevitably will make the smarmy choice. And I don't know what that is. And I'm not sure what that is, because I want to believe that, you know, that we're all corrupted by what's around us, and that when we're born, that we're all born pure, and we can make the right choices. And we try to make the right choices, but, you know, when I think of, you know, by the time this war is over, it's going to cost $1 trillion. You imagine what we could have done with $1 trillion if we would have just gone out and tried to do good things with that money around the world. If we'd have gone out and said, you know, you guys need water, we're going to dig water for you. Imagine if we'd have done that with $1 trillion. Why do we think, as a country, that bullying people is the correct way to deal with our problems? It's never worked. The day after 9/11 happened, I was doing an interview, and the guy asked me what I thought we should do. And of course, the country was scared and was very bloodthirsty. And I said, we need to go over and talk to those folks. And the DJ just went nuts. You must be crazy. There's no reason to talk to those type of people. What type of people? The same type of people you are? A human being? There's no reason to talk to a human being? Every scrape that I've ever got out of with dignity was through conversation. Never through me swatting anybody. Dan, swatting a kid on the playground doesn't work. But it's okay to go in and bomb a country just because we don't like them.
But you do understand, John, that when you say these things, and say them with the kind of passion that comes from within you, any number of people say, you see, I told you, John Mellencamp is a hopeless, way out liberal, anti-war, soft on terrorism guy.
Soft on terrorism. Soft on terrorism. That is the biggest bunch of hooey I've ever... How are you going to be tough on terrorism? We're tough now, aren't we? We're going to go over and just knock the hell out of you. We're going to put a boot in their ass. It's not going to work. Being tough on terrorism is being man enough to walk up and say, okay, what are we doing here? How are we going to solve this? Because me killing you and you killing me is not really working for either side, but it's working better for them than it is for us. Because we as Americans, sooner or later, are going to go, hey, just like we have now, we don't want this. Now that the fire in our gut has kind of diminished, and that the bloodthirstiness that we all had, and I understand, I understand how people were scared and wanting to get even. But Dan, those feelings don't even work in your private life. Your wife does something you don't like. Is your solution to be revengeful? If it is, you're not going to be married very long. It's not going to work. But why, as countries, we think this is the right way? War is not the answer. We have got to talk to people, even if we don't like them. You want to stop the war, you want to stop terrorism, let's take care of ourselves. Let's lead with being good examples to the rest of the world. Talk to the leaders. See how we can facilitate people working together, and all of that will diminish.
And if people who really care about you, people who love you, care about your career, were to come in now and say, John, cool it down. That kind of talk doesn't sell records. That kind of talk doesn't help your image.
Listen, I never, ever let my beliefs get in the fact that I may or may not sell another record. I'd like to sell records, but I'm not going to roll over and be a patsy for somebody if I do or I don't. Because ultimately and finally, I have to report to me. And the way I feel about it is, if I never sell another record, well, so be it. But if I have the opportunity to sit with you and say that war is not the answer, then I'm going to say that, if given that opportunity. And I don't understand why, there's the problem with me, is I don't understand why everybody in the world doesn't believe that.
From the East Coast to the West Coast, down the Dixie Highway, back home. This is our country.
You put the music behind the new Chevrolet truck commercials.
Mm-hmm.
Very successful commercial.
Mm-hmm.
But in years previous to that, you'd said, I don't do that kind of work.
I still don't think you should have to do that. But, you know, I'm old school, man, and that's what I think. But I also am smart enough to look around and go, you know, if I want these songs heard, then I'm going to have to change my way of thinking. If not, then I can just live with the fact that I write a song like Our Country and nobody will hear it. And I asked the guy from Chevrolet, I said, how much you guys going to play this thing? And he said, more than any #1 record you've ever had. And I laughed. And I thought, yeah, right. He wasn't kidding.
From the East Coast to the West Coast, down the Dixie Highway, back home. This is our country.
I walk down the streets in New York and people go, this is our country. I love that song, John. And then, of course, you know, there are the hardcore people who say, you know, Mellencamp sold out, that he shouldn't have done that. But this is the way the music business is today. If you want your songs heard, you have to take alternative routes. If you're not prepared to take alternative routes, then, okay, you can make records and nobody's going to hear. That's up to you. I want people to hear the songs. What's the point? We made a commercial that looked like a John Mellencamp video. You know, we had Rosa Parks in it. We had Martin Luther King in it. The community of people who sell things said, you can't sell things with negative advertisement.
Well, there would have been a legitimate argument to make, whether it turned out to be valid or not. You don't want to show the results of Katrina. It's bad news. It's negative, and we're in the business of selling trucks.
Well, and, you know, they had to grapple with that, but I wanted them to show it. I said, you know, listen, this is our country. This is what we're doing. This is what the song's about. So if you're going to show the good, you got to show the bad. And they said, okay. And they did it, you know, and like, you know, your point's well taken. In their community, that's not the way you sell trucks, but it's been the most successful truck campaign they've ever had.
Well, I can stand beside ideals I think are right, and I can stand beside the idea to stand and fight. I do believe that's a dream for everyone. This is our country.
Well, you say you're a hypochondriac and you worry about your health, but you smoke.
Not the damnedest thing. That's the one thing I do well. I don't want to mess with that.
How many times you tried to quit?
I had a heart attack when I was 42, and I tried to quit after that. But then I've just accepted that I'm a confirmed smoker. I've got millions of people who's tried to, John Cash tried to help me stop smoking, and I just kind of have accepted I'm a confirmed smoker, and you know, as cavalier and as stupid as it sounds, I just don't let the chips fall where they do.
Well, you mentioned Johnny Cash. Where'd you get to know him, and what was that relationship like?
Oh, I was fortunate enough that I played with him at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when they opened that building up in Cleveland. There's a funny story about that. I was going to sing Ring of Fire with John. It was a great big concert. It was broadcast all over the world, and every contemporary artist was there. And of course, when you do that, that's like putting kitties in a bag. All these artists together, you know, and everybody's got their own ego and their own thing. So, needless to say, sound check was running late, 2 or 3 hours late. And John was hungry, and he was supposed to do his sound check at 5, and it was now 8. And so anyway, he finally does his sound check, and he looks at me and he goes, Johnny, you want to run down Ring of Fire? And I said, you know, John, I got it. And I was accommodating John, trying to accommodate him wanting to get out of there. And he said, well, we got time to do it. And I said, well, I got it, John. You know, I know the song. So the next night, he brings me out to do Ring of Fire, and doom-diddy-ding-diddy-ding-diddy-ding. He starts singing, and it never dawned on me that he may have lowered the key from the original recording, which has been recorded, 20-some years ago, and of course his voice got lower, and it was way down here. So I tried to hit the same note that Cash was hitting, and I couldn't hit it. Then I tried to jump up here and hit that note, and of course I couldn't hit that. And I look offside the stage, and there's all my contemporaries, and they all have this look on their face. And I thought, oh, this is not good. So anyway, the song gets over, and I muddle through the song somehow, and I'm totally humiliated and embarrassed. And I go back to my dressing room and knock at the door, and it's John. And he says, John, can I come in and talk to you for a minute? I thought, oh, God. Now I'm going to get reamed out by Cash. And he walks in, and he goes, I told you we should have sound checked. So that's how I know John Cash.
Oh, the rain went wild. I fell into a burning.
What makes you happiest?
Oh, man, I mean, I find happiness a lot more now that I'm a mature individual than I did when I was a kid. Last Father's Day, a year ago, my wife Elaine bought me a outdoor movie system, a digital thing that you can watch movies outside. It's like being at the drive-in. And last night, my son, who's 12, and a friend of his, who is 13, and my other son, who's 11, and my wife, we watched Tennessee Williams Suddenly last summer. And I just knew that within 30 minutes those boys were going to be out of there. And they stayed for the entire showing of the movie till 12:30 when it got over. And I looked at Elaine and I said, I can't believe those guys watched this entire movie, and particularly knowing that the subtleties of that movie they didn't get. Because the subtlety is about homosexuality, and they all that was I know it was over their head. Well, why did they eat that kid, and why did they want money? And I didn't get it, Dad, but they stayed there, and I don't know why they suffered through it, but they did.
And that made you happy?
Yeah, it made me very happy to think that these guys would have the patience, because the old man wanted them to watch it, and they did, and they didn't complain, and of course, how could you complain? I mean, hell, we were outside, the stars were above our head, watching this great big screen of this old black and white movie. It was fantastic. I couldn't have been happier. And
what makes you angriest?
Well, I'll tell you, I've said this before, but I'll tell you. If I found out I had 10 days to live, I would get a baseball bat, and I would get in an airplane, and I'd go beat the hell out of some people that I know. That's what makes me unhappy.
You want to tell me who those two people are?
No, no, but I'm still angry. I still get angry, and I'm disappointed in myself for being so angry. I mean, I am the first guy who says not to do that, but my emotions sometimes lead me in that direction, and I keep thinking I'm going to grow out of that, but I'm still angry about things. And
well, you've told me you're not going to tell me who they are, but are these old personal grudges or problems you have with people, public officials, world figures?
All the above.
Or just the first?
All the above.
Or maybe just the first two people you meet when you get off the bus?
No. It's just. I just. Sometimes I just feel I have to stop myself from being the person that I talk against. And that's what I said earlier about there's something wrong with the human condition. I don't understand. My logic tells me this never works, but my emotions, sometimes if I don't get a hold of them, thinks, boy, if I had a club, I'd knock that guy in the head.
Well, I think I might have my check, waiter. This guy's getting a little out of hand. So, I want to go through a couple of questions, which you may not particularly like. I'm going to ask you, don't walk out on me. I'm told, listen, you ask John a certain kind of question, and he's liable to just get up, grab your cigarette, and walk out on you.
Well, I have. I did that once. I did that a couple times. I've been known to do that, yeah. But go ahead.
All right, well, I'm asking you not to do it this time.
Okay.
But you know that there are people out there who have said, and not all of them privately, John Mellencamp. You know, he's this left-wing, way out there liberal guy who's against the president, he's against the war, and he just went to Walter Reed to kind of burnish his image and sell a few records, and they see it as, their word, not mine, exploitative.
I can't pay much attention to what those folks say. Those negative type of comments, you know, listen, if I wanted to sell records, I could have done a lot other things than go to Walter Reed, I can tell you that, to play in front of 280 people.
This song goes out to a friend of mine named Joan. Joan, this is for you. Look what Jim Crow's done and gone when he changed his name. Don't know.
You know, from the very beginning, we had mentioned that Joan Baez was going to play. And when it came time to get Joan okayed, they said, well, no, she can't come and play.
Did they say why?
The public word is that there wasn't enough time to get her clearance, but we all knew that the reason was because she had been such an outspoken person against the war in Vietnam, and a lot of these guys, I think, that were at Walter Reed were in Vietnam and saw her as very anti-military, which is exactly the reason Joan wanted to play, because Joan wanted to play to say, you know, I support the troops, I don't support the war, but I do support the troops and I do support these kids coming home, and I think that she should have been allowed to do that. But if you ask them, they're going to tell you, well, they came too late and we didn't have time for clearance. But I can tell you that if it had been Jessica Simpson, she'd have got clearance like that. At least that's how we feel about it. We played in this great little building that was the old Red Cross building that the stage was hardly as big as where we're sitting.
Is this where I'm playing? Great.
I mean, we could barely get the drums and guitar amps and everything. And I mean, I was this far in front of the drummer. Right. You know, generally when you're on stage, you're on a huge stage. But there was hardly enough room to work. And you know, like Bob Hope had played there and Bing Crosby. And so it had a huge history of people entertaining the troops. There was a lot to be excited about, but there was also maybe more to be apprehensive about. You know, Walter Reed is a beautiful place. It was once upon a time. I mean, you've been there, these great big beautiful buildings. But then I found out that they're going to tear Walter Reed down, and it's like, well, wait a minute, we just built this 50 years ago. You're going to tear it down already for what? Because the properties were so much. You know, it's just like, I don't get it. You guys don't want to keep it up anymore? And you can't blame this administration, because this place has been falling down for quite some time. And you can't blame the soldiers that are there. They're only doing what they're told. That's one thing, you know, you really realize when you get involved in the military. They are only doing what they're told to do. So, you know, for me, it was very heartbreaking to see what I thought was the crown jewel of medicine for the United States of America. It's fallen down.
Well, we're having this conversation partly because there's going to be a broadcast. What are your hopes for that?
Well, I don't really have any hopes. I mean, I think that, I guess if I have hopes, it would be that people will see that you can support the troops and not support the war. I have never supported the war. I hope that people see that these kids have their best foot forward and are trying to do what the Commander-in-Chief wanted them to do. And I'm there saying, hey, I'm here supporting these guys, and hopefully that you can find a way that you can support these guys when they come home. Because, you know, Dan, flying a flag on your car doesn't mean anything, which is what America did after 9/11, and for years after that said they supported the troops because they flew a flag on their car. It doesn't mean anything. If you're supporting the troops, what are you doing? What are you doing now? I mean, we need troops now. You know, where are these people? Go enlist. If you're going to support if you support the war, go now. We need you. We need people. So, you know, that type of thinking kind of angers me and is disappointing to me.
Did you go on stage angry?
Yeah. You can't tell it by watching the show, though. I soon got over it because within the first song I saw that the people that were there were enjoying themselves, and I thought, well, you know, is this your ego or is this worried about what's right or what's wrong. I was conflicted about my emotions. So the audience that was there, the kids that were there, and the soldiers that were there, they were great. They were fantastic. So my mood soon elevated, shortly after the first song.
And when you get into the concert, does it go as you thought it might go, or did it surprise you how it went?
Well, as far as the show goes, as far as my part goes, we were good. We were good, and the show was good, and the song selection was good, and the audience that was there was good, but the highlight was really the entire concert, because the people that were there were so fantastic and so grateful. And, it turned out to be exactly what it should have been, which gave me great hope that no matter what the differences are, people surely by talking can rise above a wedge that has been driven between us and become something yet again, something better. And I think that happened with that audience. And it turned out to be a fantastic show.